Hello and welcome. So for today, in this AC class, we're going to create a solar panel model. And this is typically the model that I do for these operations, to introduce these operations, because it's pretty easy to make, it's pretty easy to follow. It's of something you've seen before at some point. Even if it would be slightly different. So we are going to go over quite a few things here. If it starts to run long, I will cut it off so I don't overwhelm you with this project, and we'll just finish it up later on. Alright, so hey, why aren't you moving? There we go. So covered today are more hotkeys, but not many. Mostly just the operational, the component operation dependent key. I'm not even sure what it's called, but if you hold it down, it changes depending on which component that you currently have selected, or the component mode that you currently have selected. We're also going to look at duplicate and duplicate special, and not to be confused with copy paste. It's not the same. You can use copy paste inside of Maya, but I strongly recommend that you use duplicate instead, especially if you're trying to duplicate things that may need changes later, and you'll see why once we get there. We'll take a look at what the input in the channel box allows us to do, creating simple extrudes, simple bevels, and how to combine objects and separate objects that have been previously combined. As previous, you simply need your computer, Maya 2018 or 19 installation, keyboard, and again, I recommend using a mouse, not a touchpad. Okay, so what are we making? We're making one of these, a solar panel. And upon first inspection, I said, okay, well, that's super simple. It's just a box. Well, that's true, but what we're going to start out making are the cells inside, right? And what we're going to do is we're not going to use these little square ones. We're going to make hexagonal ones, okay? And we could make the square ones, but making the hex ones will allow us to use more operations. So that's what we're going to do. Okay? So without further ado, let's go ahead and open up Maya. You see here I have a blank scene. Nothing exciting going on, because nothing at all is going on. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a cylinder. We're going to start not with the housing, we're going to start with the cells. So I'll go in and I'll make a simple cylinder. I don't have interactive creation on. You can turn it on, it doesn't really matter for this particular project. So I'll go to my move tool and I want to move it here at the top of the plane. And what we're going to look at first, I want to do this in order, so let me go back. Well, I guess I can't do it in order. Alright, well, the first thing we're going to look at is the input channel box. And what this allows us to do is to make changes to some primitive, or really any object that we make after we've already created it. Okay? So it's essentially setting up the attributes of an object. And you'll find it over here, and if you don't have your channel box open, if you have something like this, you can open your channel box by simply clicking right here where it says channel box. If for some reason that tab isn't there, you can also open it with this button on the far right hand corner underneath the little lock that says show hide channel box. okay? So we want to have the channel box open, and we want to look right here where it says inputs, and it says polycylinder 1, which is the name of this. And we haven't talked about naming your objects yet, but we will. I mean, we could do it right now, but that's one more thing to go over in this lesson, and I don't really want to do that yet. Just not to be overwhelming, right? So let's click right here where it says inputs, and you can see that all of this information is about the object that we currently have selected. You can see that its radius is currently 1, its height is 2, its subdivision axis is 20, which means that's how many divisions we have going around. And what we want to change here, and to do this, if you select one of these, you can actually hover over here in the middle and then middle click down your middle mouse button, and you'll see that it changes to this little arrow, and you can actually then move your mouse left and right and change those dynamically. Okay? And if you don't want to do that, you can just type in whatever value you want. And that's a very, very dense cylinder. We don't need that. So let's see, how many sides do we need? We want to make one of these, right? So we're going to make 6 sides. Type in 6. That's it. And we also want to change the height. This is too high. We just want to make a little cell, okay? So let's go ahead and do that with the height. And I'll just set it to be 0.5. That's still too high. So let's change it to 0.25. Oh, I didn't want to turn smoothing on. Which we'll cover what that means later too. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and put it back down on the grid, like so. And what I would like to do is, I kind of want to have a little lip or little edge on the outside of this. So what we can do, a couple of different things you could do, but what we're going to do is do it the easy way. Now you could use the multi-tool to just kind of go around and make an edge, but number one, it takes longer, and number two, it's more finicky, if you know that word. It means picky, right? And it's a little bit more difficult to, we will go over it though, but not right now. So instead what we're going to do is we'll use an extrude. Now what extrudes do is they take the face that you currently have selected, or faces that you currently have selected, and it pushes out an extra face out of it, right? And you can use this for a lot of things, especially with a cylinder. You can use it to create edge loops. Now we haven't covered edge loops, but we will. And all they are is just adding an extra loop on a face from edge to edge, an extra line, right, or an extra edge. Not an outside edge unless you want it to be, but we're not going to do that. So I'm going to right click and hold, and I'll choose face, and I'm going to choose each of these like so. Now with this little hex pattern, it's not too much of a problem to select all the faces, but if you're using cylinders with more faces, this can turn into kind of a pain, right? So what I'm going to show you is that hotkey that I was talking about. And the hotkey is to switch to kind of a tool panel for a bunch of tools depending on what you're using, right? go back to Maya, and I want to right click and choose vertex instead. Okay. I'm also going to show you another hotkey, and that is the grow or shrink selection key. Now, depending on your keyboard, this can be in a couple different places. For mine, it's the period or the right. I don't even know what those are called. The arrow bracket, I guess, line bracket. It's the key to the left of the right shift key. Okay, let me pause this and I'll get a picture of a keyboard and show you. Okay, so we're looking for this key right here, the period key, but if you look on it, it should have the arrow brackets going right, okay? But it's right here. And this is the increase selection key, and this is the decrease selection key. So it allows us to grow our selection or shrink our selection. So if I push that key over here, and it's shift, and you hold down shift whenever you press the period key, and you'll see what happens here is that my selection of vertices goes up or down. Right, I can select more or select less. And you can do this with faces as well. See, it selects all the ones that are adjacent to whichever one that I had selected. So if I select the middle vertex, grow my selection once, hold down the control key, then right click, we get this new little menu. And this lets us change our selection to a lot of things. Now if I, that's what I wanted to do, but I didn't want to do it so quickly. So I have this vertex and this vertex selected. I can hold down control, right click and hold, go to faces, and then choose contained faces. And that will choose all of the faces that are contained within those vertices. Okay. Now, that's really primarily what I use that for, but there are a lot of things that, and you can see that right now, you can change it to UVs, which we haven't covered, to the edges, or if I can go back, you can change it to the faces, the vertices, whatever. But if you're having trouble doing that, just remember for right now you can just hold down shift, select all of these, and you're good to go. Okay, so I'm going to choose extrude, and that's this little key up here, right? You can also go up to edit mesh, extrude. And when I choose that, you'll see that everything, your gizmo, first of all, will get offset, and you get this new little pop-up. Now with this pop-up, you can change the thickness of your extrude, and you can see what's going on here. It keeps it takes the old faces and pushes them out. Right? You still keep that edge, which is what we want. We want to keep the outside edge, and then it allows you to change the thickness, which we don't really want to do. We want to change the offset. You see what's going on here. It makes this little lip around the outside. Alright, so make something about like this. Right, and we're going to then do the same thing. We'll choose this face here, hold down shift, double click the next face over, and you'll get that entire ring. Alright, and then we'll choose extrude again. Again, you can go up to edit mesh, extrude for the same thing if you can't find this little button. And then we're going to push it out just a little bit to make that kind of outside lip. Right? Alright, it's looking okay. little bit sharp around these edges, and that's one thing about any kind of model that you want to remember for the future, is that there's no such thing in nature as a 90-degree angle. It looks real good on a piece of geometry paper, but it's going to be really hard to find something that's exactly 90 degrees. So what we want to do is kind of soften the edges most of the time on everything that we make. So I'm going to choose the edges going around the outside, right? I can just double click that edge and it will select the entire ring going around. I must be in multi-select mode. Yeah, I am. So make sure you're in edge selection mode or multi-selection mode to be able to double click that edge. So with that edge selected, I'll go up to Edit Mesh, Bevel. And with this little pop-up, I can change the depth of the bevel. I can also change how many segments are in that bevel. I'm going to put it at 3 segments. It's a nice rounded corner. Change the fraction to about 0.8. Okay. The next hotkey we're going to learn is the Repeat Last key. The Repeat Last key will take whatever selection that you have and perform the same operation that you just performed on the last type of component to that component. Well, what that means is we can double click this line and press the G key. Let's change that. And then you'll see that it changes to the bevel tool, and I can very quickly add a bevel. And for this one, I'll just add 2 segments to the edge that I have currently selected, and then we'll get a nice beveled edge on the inside too. And we'll go ahead and do this again on the bottom. So I'll double click this bottom edge, and I will select everything on the bottom, the bottom edge. Press the G key. And for this one, I just wanted to have a slight bevel, so I'm just going to take that down to 0.1. Alright, and there we go. So for all intents and purposes, we have our cell, first cell. Alright, so now to create these, as you can see, these have multiple cells. Lots of multiple cells. So now we need to perform the same thing, create the same object. Maybe about 30 more of them this way. And going this way, maybe another 20, right? Now, ideally, I'd like to actually make it more than that, because those things actually have a lot of cells. But I know that some of your computers a little bit low on the CPU or RAM side, so we're going to keep this light to not overwhelm your computer. So to do this, we're not going to do copy-paste, and we're not going to remake everything. What we're going to do is use something called Duplicate Special. Well, first of all, duplicate, let's go check that out. Let's see, if you go to Edit, and then you have Duplicate and Duplicate Special. Duplicate just duplicates something one time. So it's pretty much just copying something, right? So at first glance, it looks like just copy-paste. If you just use duplicate, yeah, it is. It's just you're duplicating the object. But we're not going to use just duplicate. We're going to use Duplicate Special, and you'll see why in a moment. consequently, before I go any further, you can see here that I've performed all these operations, and if you look back over here at the inputs, it's actually filled up with all of the operations that I've performed. And I can roll back all the way back to the original cylinder if I want, and actually change the radius and things after the fact. Or I can change the subdivisions, but you can see here it starts to get crazy because all of these operations I've performed on this object were done mathematically, as far as Maya is concerned, with something that only had 6 sides. When you start adding subdivision axes to this object, it starts getting weird. So you can go back, but only to a certain point before things get crazy, right? You can change some things you can't. I can always go back and change a bevel that I've previously done, or whatever. But again, there's only so far you can roll back before things get crazy. Alright, so let's go ahead and do the duplicate special. So one thing I forgot to mention, and what I'm going to mention now, is whenever you're using these tools, and if I go up to any of them, you'll see that you can select the button, or you can click this little box out to the right. What this little box is the options for that particular operation. So instead of doing just a bevel and it works automatically, I can open up the options and change things about the bevel that I'm going to perform, right? Then I can hit apply, and there it goes. For a lot of tools, it's more useful than it is for others. For duplicate special, it's essential. So if I go to edit, duplicate special, I'm not going to click duplicate special. I'm going to click right here, the options box. Okay, so the options for duplicate special are, first of all, you want to make a copy or an instance. Do you want to group it under the parent, the world, or make a new group, which we haven't talked about that, so just leave it at parent. And then you have the good stuff. You have the translate, the rotate, and the scale for each instance of this particular object. And if you didn't understand instances from programming class, this is a good way to understand them real quick. An instance of something is a copy of something else, and it retains all of the things about the parent object, right? So what this is going to mean is, if I create a copy of this object, it will be completely independent from the parent, right, or the original object. If I create an instance, any changes I make to the first one or to any subsequent one will propagate to all of the other copies. So let's see how that works. So if I select copy, I'm going to make each copy move to the right, and let's see how much. First of all, let's grab this guy, and then we're going to copy it, or just Control D to duplicate it, and then move it, and see how much. Actually, I think I want to rotate it to the right and move it. Now, you know what? I don't want this to run too long, so we'll just do it the easy way. And what I want to actually watch is over here to the right and see how far I move it. I want to kind of line this up as well as I can. It's not going to be exact. And then go over here and then take that to a nice even number, which I 0.7 or 1.75 for mine. It will probably vary depending how large your cylinder hex is. Alright, so 1.75 is in the Z, so now I can delete this guy. Select this guy again, edit, duplicate special options, and I'm going to translate this, and remember this is X, Y, Z, so I'm going to do right here 1.75. let's make 5 copies. And we're going to have them be individual copies. I'll hit duplicate special, and then we get 5 copies of it going to the right, and each one of them is moved to the right 1.75. Now, because I chose copy, if I make changes to this one, I don't want to do that. Let's do this. For example, I just move the faces, you see nothing happens. Now I don't want to do that. I want to make all of these cells the same, and if later on I'm thinking I might make changes, then I want them to all have that same change. So I'm going to undo all of that. I'll select this object again, go to Edit, Duplicate Special, Options, and all my stuff is still here. Nothing changed, right? So I'm going to choose Instance instead, and this time I'll do 10. Duplicate Special, and we have 5 more, but that's not the only change. Because we chose Instance, you can immediately see what's going on. It's like synchronized swimming over here. I choose these faces. If I make changes to one, it makes changes to all of them. So, quite useful. Alright, so we have our little line here, and what we want to do actually is open up something called the outliner. You can think of the outliner as a kind of a list of all of the objects in a scene. To open up the outliner, you can go up to Windows and then choose Outliner, and it will appear over here to the left. And you can see I have all of these named as just P cylinder, polycylinder, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can rename these, which we again we were going to cover later, but I guess we'll go ahead and do it now. The P cylinder, if I want to rename this, you just double click and then give it a name, right? But don't, it doesn't matter, because we're going to group them. What I want to do is make one group of all of these cells, and then that will allow me to then duplicate that group to make the next row. So I'll choose all of these cylinders, and then you want to hit Control G, not just G, Control G, and that will make a group. And you can see what happens over here. It makes a group of all of these, right? And you can still select them individually, or you can select the group, select all of them. And I will rename the group. I'll say Cell Row. Okay, so with the cell row selected, I'm just going to do a simple duplicate here so I can see how far I need to move this and in what direction. Pay attention to your translate X, Y, and Z over here. So I'm just going to move this like so, and I'm not going to take the time to really make it exact. If you want to make yours exact, you should. But again, I don't want to be sitting here and you're watching me move this stuff around and then take 5 minutes to do it. So we'll just move it like that, and we'll see we have translate, and the X is, let's just give it a 1.5, round it off. And for this one we'll do, let's just do 0.87, we'll move it in the other direction like so, and that'll make it easier to remember. I'll just copy that and remember 1.5 in the X, 0.87 in the Z. Alright, so let's delete that new row. And I'll take this cell row, and I'm only going to duplicate special Well, I'll just duplicate it. I guess I could, but I'm not going to. I'm going to duplicate special and just make one. I'll duplicate special one time, so one copy. You'll see why in a minute. I'll keep it as an instance, and the translate, this is wrong. There's 0.87 in the Z, 1.5 in the X. Duplicate special, and we get this new row moved to the position that we want. Now I also want to take this last one. Let's see what's going on. I just want the cylinder, guys, just the one. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. Because now, whenever I make that copy here, I should be okay. So I'll just copy it instead of duplicate special on that, and then I'll just move it off to the side. So just Control D to duplicate. Alright, so we have two rows, and if you haven't guessed it already, we're going to then select all of this, Control G again to make a group, and that will replace the previous two groups with this new group, and then I can delete the other two groups, and I'll turn this one into cell row. Just like before, I'm going to make sure I have that entire group selected. Control G, or sorry, Control D just to duplicate. And we're going to move this and see how far our subsequent duplicate specials need to go. If I zoom in, and something like that, I guess, would be okay. So about 3. Now that'll be easy. So I'll delete that, select this, edit, duplicate special, and I don't know, let's do like 5 maybe. And we'll move those, and make sure you delete your old one, right? So get rid of that. And we're going to translate on the X3. And then we have the makings of a panel, or at least the cells inside of the panel. And again, I'll select all of these rows, and you can do this inside of the outliner, or you can just marquee select. Control G again, and we'll call this cells. And we have a group of all of the cells we've created. And I want to take this and try to center it. Okay, and the next part's the easy part. We just have to make the panel that goes around this. So I'll just create a simple polygon cube in the middle. And I'm going to use my scale tool. And I just want to kind of have it just enough to encapsulate all of this, all the cells, maybe a little bit more, and we're going to do a bevel. Same thing on the other axis. And if it gets hard to see your cells, just move down a little bit, and then you'll be able to see your cells. center it here, like so. Okay, so let's make a lip on the outside of this as well. So I'll select this big face that's on top, do an extrude, and I'm not going to change the thickness on this one, I'm just going to change the offset. You see what that does, it makes a little lip on the outside. Make sure it doesn't go past the cells on any side. Maybe a little bit more. Something like 0.3 for mine, but you'll have to eyeball yours, because yours probably will be a different size, because your cells are probably a different size. Okay, so with that done, let's select the inside face again and extrude one more time. And this time we are going to change the thickness. We'll just push it down. Now consequently, if changing the thickness here is a little bit tricky for you, because I'm just clicking on thickness and then left clicking and then moving. If that's a little bit tricky for you, you can just make sure that face, your extruded face, is selected. Go to your move tool and you're doing the same thing. You're moving that face up and down, and that's all thickness is doing. And we'll set it down maybe something like this. Now we'll go to this outside edge, and remember, if we want to select an entire ring, we can select one face, hold down shift and double click the other one, or for a simple shape like this, you should be able just to double click. Well, apparently not. So I'll select this one face, hold down shift, select the next one in that ring, and that will select the entire ring. Let me move that up a bit. Like, I don't know, maybe something like that. And let me select this bottom face and move that up. Something like this. And now let's simply create some bevels. And we can bevel two edges at the same time. They're going to be the same bevel depth. So I'll just right click and choose edge. Double click this one, and it should select the entire inner ring. And then I'll hold down shift and do the same thing, double click the outside one. And there we go. We have the inside one and the outside selected. And like before, we'll go up to Edit Mesh, Bevel, and we can kind of zoom in, take a look at what's going on. Change the fraction, and we'll make the segments maybe 2, maybe 3. Alright, that makes a nice, like, picture frame almost. Kind of a bevel. I want to select the bottom one too, so I'll just double click that. Oh, it's not working. Oh, there we go. So I'll select one, hold down shift, double click the next one. It's still not working, because what happens when you do bevels and extrudes and everything, it messes up Maya's calculation as far as which edge loop goes where, or sorry, which edge is connected to which edge. Now there are a couple ways to solve that. The easiest way is to delete history, but we're not going to do that because We haven't gone over that, and that's one too many things. It's a bridge too far for this lesson, so let's not do that. Although it is easy to do. Instead, we'll just select these individually. Let's select this one, hold down Shift, select this one, rotate around, select that one, and then select the last one. So you want to make sure you have all those edges selected. And we'll do one more bevel. And we'll just leave it at the default settings, because what we're going to do is then right click, select the face, choose this bottom face, go to your scale tool, and we're going to scale it in all directions. Okay, now with that done, do one more extrude, change the offset, something like this, kind of in the middle. Do another extrude. You want to change the thickness. And then that's our solar panel. Now, ideally, if we had more time, I would like to actually extend this down and make a couple different panels, but I don't want this thing to get too crazy, because again, I know some of your computers slow down a lot. Maybe some of them are running kind of slow right now with just what we have, because it doesn't really look like it. But this is, well, no, I mean, this isn't really a lot of polygons, to be honest. But for our purposes, this will suffice for now anyway. Okay, so let's make sure we covered everything. We covered a couple more hotkeys, the altering the selection of, well, yeah, the change selection key, I guess, would be the control key, and then right clicking whenever you have either edge, face, or vertex selected. We covered duplicate and duplicate special. We covered input, we covered extrude, we covered bevel. We did not cover combining objects or separating objects, so let's take a look at that real quick. We did combine objects by grouping, but that's not what I mean by combining objects. Okay, so change of plans on the final two here, combining objects and separating objects. Upon attempting this operation, I see that we have kind of too many things, and this may lock up your computer, so we're not going to do those for this particular lesson, so we'll come back to that. We did see how to combine objects in groups. Again, that's not the same thing, but we're not going to do that for this lesson because it will probably freeze everything up. So we'll go ahead and end this here. So take your solar panel, take a screenshot of it, and submit it at your convenience to Google Classroom. I hope you learned all of these and got some good practice, and we'll see you next time.